Welcome, Class 7. Let's get started with Class 7. We're going to go on with our houses and signs exercises, learn more about them as we go on. We'll be halfway through when we get through Libra and the 7th house. So let's get started. Okay, so let's do a little, backtrack a little bit to learn what, so the zodiac, let's talk about the zodiac first. The word zodiac, which, even Vedic astrologers use interchangeably, is actually, I believe it's a Greek word, and it comes from zoan or animal, or the word zoo is the root word for that, and zodiakos, which means a circle of animals. So the zodiac is really, and I'm introducing you to each of the animal that corresponds with each of the zodiac signs. So it's 12 different types of earth-dwelling creatures. So even in the Vedic text, now I want you to learn this if you're going to study Vedic astrology, Brihat Prahashara Hora Shastra. I know it's a tongue twister, but it's a Brihat Parashara Hora Shastra. It's often, this is one of the main texts that Vedic astrologers study. It's dated about 3,000 to 4,000 years. It's about 3,000 to 4,000 years old. It's the main text. Even in that text, a lot has been lost, but it is what we refer to as astrologers. So when we want to quote a source, we quote this source. And the author of this was Parashara. Parashara was the great saint who authored it. So even in the Vedic text, it's, in Virat Parashara Hora Shastra, one of the chapter 3 on Rashis, on the zodiac signs, Parashara says, the ram, the bull, the couple, crab, lion, girl, man with the scale, scorpion, man with the bow, crocodile, man with the pitcher, fish, and all following each other. So even the Vedic text mentioned this zoo that is our life. It's all the earth-dwelling creatures. So I think what they were looking for was representations for, metaphors, so we could understand each of the zodiac signs. But my understanding is that this actually is more Greek than it is Vedic, although there was a lot of interchange happening between the cultures, with the trade and all of that stuff. Generally speaking, in the Vedic, excuse me, doggy, you need to go away. No, go to daddy. No, not here. Sorry, my dog is here. Hold on. She wants lap. Okay, so I'm introducing you to these. So keep an eye on, they are helpful to understand. If you want to understand each of the zodiac signs, it helps to see a metaphoric animal, land-dwelling animal, earth-dwelling animal to correspond with it. But generally speaking, when we speak from the Vedic perspective, which is the more traditional perspective, we like to associate each of the signs with the body parts. And oftentimes people forget, they study, when we study medical astrology, which is really, really fun, and it's such an important aspect of astrology, I just can't tell you how much you can get in your understanding of our health and disease tendencies and all that stuff from astrology is phenomenal. I can't imagine doing Ayurveda and yoga without medical astrology, because it tells you the genetic predispositions, the weaknesses of your, whether it's blood chi weakness, or if it's, your bones are weaker, which is Saturn, and if your Mars is weak, you can see adrenal weaknesses, but you can also see the organs and body parts. But generally speaking, from Vedic astrology perspective, we like to think of each of the signs correspond to a body type. So I'm introducing you to both the animals and the body type, and just another set of metaphors for you to understand what these signs mean. So again, Brihat Prashara Hora Shastra. From that, this is a quote: head, which starts with Aries, most important, it's the head, mouth, arms, chest, which is Cancer, solar plexus, stomach, pelvic triangle, covered part, which is Scorpio, buttocks, thighs, shanks, feet. So we go to the whole body. So these will be these are the metaphors. We are also using the Tanu. I'm giving a vessel or transportation type to each of the zodiac signs. So I'm just putting all this together to help you get a more broader view and a deeper view of each of the zodiac signs. So a little bit of going back a little bit on what we learned before. The zodiac is called the zodiac in Western astrology. In Vedic astrology, we call the zodiac Kala Purusha, which means the being. Kala is time, being of time, man of time, person of time, a person who is trapped in time. So time, space, we are, the implication here is that when we are divine creatures trapped in time, space, this is our script in this lifetime. This is the vessel we got for the transport, for the journey of our life. This is the face we got. This is the hair we got. This is the organs we got. This is the speech patterns we got to experience time, space. When we meditate, when we go or in moments of deep insight, we go beyond time, space. But most of the time we are trapped in time, space, which is our karma. So we call the zodiac the Kala Purusha, and the Kala Purusha is let's see. So and then we call the zodiac signs, each of them Rashi. I just need you to learn it, because if you go on to study, these words will come up. They will assume that you know them. You go on to study astrology, and there's a lot of good resources for you to pursue your studies with me or others. Rashi, and Rashi simply means a cluster, a heap, or a bunch of something. That's all it means. It usually means a heap, a bunch of something. It's a Rashi of, so in this case, the division of space. So Rashi is a 30-degree division of space of 360 degrees of the zodiac. So there are 12 Rashis, which is the 12 zodiac signs. Each of them corresponds to an animal. Each of them corresponds to a body type, body part. And then, of course, I'm giving you each of them corresponds to a vessel or a transportation style. So again, the Brihat Parashara Hora Shastra says, Vishnu is the figure of time, which is, he's a Godhead, he's a divine being, whose limbs become unconscious as the Rashis. So each part of our body, or each aspect of the zodiac, or each aspect of the whole, circle, is an unconscious limb, part of Vishnu, who is the divine being. There is the absolute one. And the planets are the conscious aspects. So conscious are deities. They're alive in our consciousness, as they live as neurotransmitters, as our hormones. They're alive beings in our consciousness. And Vishnu is the absolute aspect of the divine, manifested in time, space, as everything that exists. So every zodiac sign is a different part of the Vishnu. So what we need to remember as we study astrology is that the study of astrology is the study of Vishnu. It's the study of the divine. We do use, astrology for mundane purposes, and, will I make it in this business? Will I get married? All those things are important. But remember, the main goal of the study of Vedic astrology, it is a spiritual practice. It is one of the paths to know the divine. Some people think that the Vedas actually say that this is the study of any subject can take you to the divine. If you study anything, whether it's music or art or chemistry, with complete focus and devotion and wanting to know the whole, eventually you will understand the whole. But what the Vedas say is that study of astrology is the fastest path. If you're going to use the path of knowledge, because there's also the path of devotion in Vedic, which is through prayer and spirituality. But study of astrology is is believed to be one of the fastest paths to your liberation, to your enlightenment. And if you think about it, once you get good at this, every single day when you can stand outside and see that life is unfolding exactly as it's supposed to, it's, that's what astrologers do. They look at it and it's unfolding. There is a real freedom in that. And that is that, then you let divine will guide your life, which is, quote unquote, what spirituality is. So going forward, I wanted to give you another little introduction to some more details of astrology, because I'm getting a lot of questions asked. It's funny because some of the homework that I've given you, which you don't have to turn in, which is to evaluate your first house, evaluate your second house, evaluate your third house. What I wanted all of you to do was to evaluate that from as if you don't know astrology yet, because you can't evaluate. Once we finish level 2 or 3, then you will reevaluate it as an astrologer. Right now, I wanted you to evaluate it simply. If you know what it is and you can look at yourself honestly, you can evaluate it honestly. But there were some really interesting ways people were trying to put together pieces of what they had learned so far and evaluating. Very creative. I was very impressed. But what I did want to show you was that what we are studying right now is the D1 Rashi chart, okay? In general, based on Parashara, the Bible of Vedic astrology, there are 15 more charts that need to be interpreted. So what is a Rashi? So this chart is actually, so Rashi is 30 degrees. These are 30 degrees heaps, okay? Each zodiac sign is a Rashi. It's a word we use interchangeably, zodiac sign Rashi. And Bhava is house. House is the manifestation related to something that corresponds to the earth realm. Something that then, it corresponds to something in real life, okay? Like Libra is the house of cooperation, and Bhava is the house of marriage, which is something we do in real, in life on earth. So each of these are Rashis, okay? And so what we are studying right now is the 30-degree division of space. We're dividing 360 into 30 degrees division. And that gives us kind of the picture of what your planets are doing in space at the time of your birth. But what you have to remember is, let's say you have Mars at 5 degrees of Cancer. This is Cancer. This is Leo in the zodiac. This is Cancer. Let's say you have Mars at 5 degrees of Cancer. Mars at 5 degrees of Cancer is very different from Mars at 28 degrees of Cancer. Because this again would be valid for about 2 hours. Every 2 hours, as the Earth is moving, there is a Rashi change. The new Rashi rises in the eastern horizon, okay? So, and people born within 2 hours, if you're not going to have your horoscope. So now in Western astrology, as far as I know, they use only this. We use very, very specific. We start to break them up. So these charts, these 15 more charts that I've shown you here, are further divisions of space. This is dividing this is called the Hora charts. It's dividing each Rashi into just 2 parts. So if your Mars is in the first half or the second half, if it's in the first half, it'll go here, second half, it'll go here. Then it's D3, D4, D5, D6, D7. The 2 that mainly the Vedic astrologers always look at is D9 and D10, because they're very important. D9 is your life purpose, how you will be able to manifest your life purpose, the divisions, and the D10 is career and worldly success. So these 2, and also your spiritual path is seen here. But so how do we I'm showing all this to you. You're not ready to learn all that. A lot of time people start learning them too early, and then they just get confused. You almost need a supercomputer for a brain to interpret astrology, because there's a lot. So basically, imagine if you're going to just reading one chart, imagine reading 15 charts simultaneously and coming up with an answer. But I was trying to come up with a metaphor for you to understand why this is the most important chart. If you can just master that, you can get so much out of it. Now, you may not get details, but let's say, so think of this as, let's say it says here, the interpretation, that your Mars is engaged in cleaning your grandma's attic. Okay, so let's say you have a twin brother or sister who also is born with a Mars that is very interested in cleaning the grandma's attic. Okay, here we're going to start. So the difference in their in the degrees is good. So if twin won't have that difference, but let's say another person born on that day who also has Mars in in this position is also very predisposed to cleaning the grandma's attic. But what if their Mars is 29 degrees and yours is 5? So think of it this way, and that's going to show up here. What are the details the details are seen here. So let's say you start cleaning your grandma's attic. The early part of your grandma's attic, you're seeing, I don't know, dust and just useless items. But somewhere, deep inside the attic, there is a precious heirloom, okay? And you find it, and you become a multimillionaire. That's going to show up here. So the details are shown here. So that's why twins' lives differ, because these, particularly the ascendant degrees can differ, the moon degrees can differ. There will be some differences in even a few minutes, like 3 to 4 minutes. And of course, there's also free will factor. What you do with, cleaning your grandma's attic is also your personal. There are always free will factors, and who you marry or who you engage with will also influence you. Okay, so I just wanted to show you this to see that you have a long way to go, but if you can learn how to interpret the D1 chart, and in our next lesson, once we finish this series, we will actually start learning the techniques for interpreting. Now that you understand the meaning of things, the basic meanings, you get a lot out of it. You may not get prediction out of it, but as far as counseling is concerned, it's very valuable. If you're seeing that somebody is going to be cleaning their grandma's attic for the next 10 years, it doesn't matter if they find a precious heirloom or they find dust. What you need to teach them as the counselor is, this is what you're going to be doing and how you're going to do it really well, so you get great satisfaction out of it. I call it best practices of cleaning the attic, which is the job, I think, eventually of even the astrologer. Instead of saying, oh, you're not going to find anything precious, or that's your karma. Let's do the best we can in cleaning that particular attic. Okay, so that's just the example. But I wanted to show you, these are called Varga charts. Sometimes they're called harmonic charts. Sometimes they're called divisional charts. And this is where the predictive aspect comes in, where you actually have to just give them more of the details. And, and then of course the difference in, few minutes. The reason a lot of astrologers hesitate on these is you need a very accurate birth times for these, because some of them, like, I believe it's a D60, that even like seconds make a difference. So most people don't have that, but over time, we always use the D9 and D10 going forward. And I will teach you how to do all of that. But that's sort of a little back up. Now let's go back just to give you some more information on your studies in Vedic astrology. Let's go back to our hero's journey and continue our study of these signs. So we studied Aries. Aries is the head, ready for adventure. Taurus, okay, guys, we're gonna, it's the mouth. Remember, how am I gonna meet my needs? All my senses need to be satisfied, and that's very much the Taurus Venus ruled. The desires need to be fulfilled. All of the other stuff like that. And Gemini is the air sign, which says, okay, I better get to know this place. Let me get a roadmap. We're gonna go on this journey. Cancer is, the first water sign. I need to feel good doing this. We need all of this. We need to meet our needs. We need to have an adventure, a purpose. We need to understand what we're doing. And we need to, our feelings matter, and other people's feelings matter. And so here we air, fire, earth, air, water. Then we did the second level, we go to Leo. We start with fire again, ready and experienced for a daring adventure. Having gone through all this, you are now more experienced, ruled by the sun as opposed to Mars. And Virgo, is earth plan. Okay, this adventure is going to be harder. Let me get a survival plan together. Virgo is very much about planning. It's ruled by Mercury. So now we come to the third, the second air sign here in this section, and Libra. So at this point, the thought arises, all the air signs need other people. They're very much about engaging with other people, engaging with knowledge, but also engaging with people. Third house, as we learned, it's more engaging with your neighbors and your friends and your, classmates and that kind of stuff. But here, the hero we realize that it's really not a lot of fun to take the journey alone. Unless you're a monk, you may have that tendency. Most of us need a partner on our journey. So again, it's an air sign, so some knowledge is required here. Need to get to know my opposite, and I'm calling it my enemy, and we will learn why, because the opposites are our enemy. And because really, if you're going off on a journey and you are really, good at something, you want somebody to, your partner to be somebody not who has the same skills as you, but who has skills that you don't have. That's why it's your opposite. It doesn't really make sense to take, two people along who have exact, even like if you're a captain of a ship, like, I don't know, Star Trek Enterprise, you need some people who are good at certain things and some people who are good at certain things, because you need all these skills to survive in the journey. So that's why I put here, need to get to know my opposite, which is the nature of Libra. So what is Libra? Libra is called Tula. It actually means a scale. Tula, it's a scale, the old and the scale where you're kind of weighing. And you're going to start to see the other side of Venus. We see one side of Venus when we study Venus, which is, pleasure and beautiful sounds and beautiful smells and beautiful colors and art and music and, just pleasing the senses. But then we also saw the other side of Venus, which is the diplomat, the, let's get along with everybody, and the business side of Venus. And this is, so remember, one Venus rule sign is Taurus, and this is the other Venus rule sign, which is Libra. And so it's actually, because we're looking at zoo animals, it's a man in a marketplace with scales. Already gives you some clue into what Libra is all about. And, Libra, as you know, some of you will know, it is the sign of relationships. But, Libra by itself is not, the seventh house is, but Libra represents the hero's search for balance. In the fifth house, the hero finds his beloved, something that inspires him. In the sixth house, the hero is of service to to his body and to getting things right, so he can nurture his beloved. Let's see a question. Make sure. So the question here, Heather is asking. So Libra in the 12th with Mars and K2 is complicated to say. Okay, Heather. Yeah. Yes and no, and we will, as we get a little further along, Heather, I promise you will answer it. And give me a phone call and I will answer that question, because I know you're wanting to get that question answered, okay? After this class, I will answer your question. I wanted you to take the 7th and 8th class, which we will do today, 7th house and 8th house, okay? So Libra is, okay, one more question. Let's see. Okay, great. Okay, great. Thank you. Good question, Heather, and I will answer that. But I wanted you, even your last email to me, I wanted you to have knowledge of Libra and Scorpio before I answer those questions that you had, okay? Okay, so Libra is that sector of the sky where we have a search for balance, where the hero is learning to, we have one more question. Oh, okay, we got it. Okay, we're learning, because remember the journey started with the head, and we learned to be the captain of our own ship. I'm the captain of my own ship. Remember, that was Aries. And now we've come full circle. We are 180 degrees from Aries now at Libra in the zodiac. And now Aries, now the hero is in search for, maybe I'm not the captain of my own ship. There are two equals, okay? So Libra represents that portion of the sky where we are searching to equilibrium. It's really about, that's why Librans have if you have a lot of planets in Libra, art and music and even interior decorating, all that, they're very aesthetically inclined, because they kind of have this really nice ability to see harmony in space, okay? So this search for balance, this search to unify opposites, 180, what is 180 degrees my opposite, the search for harmony. And of course, accommodation. To unify opposites, you need accommodation. And our adversaries are also seen here. It's kind of interesting that Libra, which is the seventh house, it corresponds to the seventh house, which is the house of marriage and relationship, is also the house of our open enemies. Because our partners are our open enemy. They're openly. 12th house is our house of our hidden enemies. Enemies we don't think, because it's in the subconscious, we don't know what is functioning as our hubris, as our enemy. And, and it can even be literally physical people who are hidden from us. You may have, people who are plotting against you, but you're just not aware because they're hidden, and they'll come out of nowhere. But Libra and the seventh house is, your partner is you're openly challenging you every day to be not you, correct? So they're openly your enemy. So we also read your open enemies from Libra and the seventh house. So Libra is the hero's search for his other half or her other half, because she recognizes that something is missing. I don't have the whole picture. Now, if you have a horoscope, and some people do, where their Libra and their seventh house and their sun and the moon are really in equilibrium, you'd be surprised. That means you may be destined to be single because you're already complete within yourself. So it's not necessary, and you see that with great masters, they don't look for the other half like Amma, because they are already complete. They're not searching. That something is not missing. They have completed the union. Okay, but most of us have not. For most of us, we know that something is missing. I've got, these skills, I've got these desires, but something is missing. And if nothing else, Libra is the sign of sex, as is the seventh house. Libra has all the things that you just can't do alone. You need one more person to do it with, including, having sex or making babies or even building a business, because you need something else to complete you. You complete your skill set. And so that's the portion of this portion of the sky. And people with a lot of planets in Libra have a very difficult time going at it alone, because they feel all the time that something is missing. People with a lot of planets in Aries, for example, will have a very hard time. Everybody wants the other person, they want somebody else, but they have a very hard time letting go of their individuality. People with a lot of planets in first house or in Aries, because they're kind of pretty full of themselves. But people, a lot of planets in Libra will have a hard time. They will always be looking for a partner, whether it's in business, whether it's, they just don't feel they could start things on their own. And it's interesting. It's not, remember the part here in Libra and the seventh house, which we're going to study next, we're not talking about unequal relationship. Siblings, neighbors, those relationships, your younger siblings are seen in the third house because you are supposed to take care of them. Your older siblings relationship, 11th house. Your relationship with your mentors is seen in your 9th house because they are gurus, they're mentor, they're your teacher. Right now, your relationship to me is as I am your mentor. You guys all can't talk at once. You have to listen to me. You have to patiently bow down and listen, right? Your relationship to your bosses is seen in the 10th house, or, we have all these unequal relationships, but the Libra and the 7th house is where we see you're equal, where two people are supposed to be equal, two halves of one, two halves make one, it's funny because when I go to see Amma, when we take the embrace, my husband, he's kind of Mr. Skeptic, and, we go in and he always gets, sometimes when she gives a hug, she gives a gift. He always gets an apple. And I never get one when I'm with him, ever, ever, ever. I never get the gift. So one year I asked her, and she said, you're supposed to share. Okay? So it is, because she's reminding me, you are two people as one, and that is Libra. So Libra energy is all about counterbalancing. It's about, meeting someone halfway if Libra is well disposed. We say Libra is keeping score because, remember, it's a shopkeeper. It's, I'm going to give you 2 pounds of apples for $6, right? But if you only have $3, I'm going to give you, 1 pound of apples. Got it? And that's kind of the nature of Libra, which a lot of times people forget, because Librans are very diplomatic and very sweet. But we always say, deep down, they're keeping score. They're like 50-50, okay, guys? Everybody needs to be fair. And you look at certain signs like water signs, they have a hard time with Libra, because water signs like Scorpio, Heather, Scorpio, Pisces, and Cancer, they're like, oh, give everything. They don't keep score. And then they have a difficult time with Libra, because Libra is, a good relationship is in the beginning anyway, it's kind of like a business partnership. Later on, it becomes, You know, when we first start off in a relationship, 50-50, and people get along really well. I had a marriage therapist I used to work with, and she used to say, you know, it's really easy. You can complicate it. If the number of days that are good are better than the number of days that are bad, the relationship works, you know. But so one of, you know, Libra's hubris is they keep score because there's something mercantile, just like Mercury. Remember, Venus and Mercury are more the mammalian planets. They're not, they're functioning on making things work. And, and it works when you're giving 50-50. And because it's an air sign, Libra, it's very interested in love and relationship, Libra, and getting along with other people, and particularly the partner, but any one-on-one relationship, even friendships, which are equal. But we often say that they are detached from the cosmic principle of love, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It just means, because love here I've been using as moksha, which is surrender. In surrender, you would be the shopkeeper who says, and there are people like that, people who don't have a lot of Libra, who will, you meet them. These are usually water people who will open a shop and, or like the famous restaurant I heard about that somebody opened in India where he just cooks and people go in and eat. And if you don't have money, you don't leave it. If you have money, you leave money behind so that everybody can eat. That's not Libra, okay? Libra is I gave you $5 of food, you give me at least $5 back, okay? Because it is the search for the other half. It's that, is to complete the two pieces of one. So in a sense, what happens is when we reach the Libra phase of our hero's journey, usually we get into relationship, even it can be a business partnership. Let's say so it's not just, we'll see that in the 7th house, but Libra represents business and justice, because let's say you have a really good skill in computer science and you want to do a startup. Now what you need is an accountant. You don't need another computer scientist on board. You need an accountant who will keep track of how the money is coming in. So what happens now is you've got the CEO and the CTO, you've got 2 captains, 1 ship, okay? And that's what happens in Libra. And that's why it's also the sign, this is the scales. You see, we use this symbol for Libra, and we also use it for justice, which is, justice is, in a sense, justice is eye for an eye. You kill somebody, you go, you have a death penalty. But love is not. Love, that's the path. The surrender path is very different. Okay, and this is a very important. I'm not judging this. A very important part of our journey, and it makes the world go around. It helps keep things in balance, whether it's in a one-on-one relationship. And when we grow up, actually, it's interesting. Even with our parents, when we're children, we have a sun-moon relationship. It's sort of like they are the mentors and we are the receivers. Like the moon shines because the sun puts his light on him. But when children grow up, it actually becomes a Libran relationship, because now you've got 2 equals, and that's when the struggles begin, because parents get used to, having an unequal relationship. But so this is part of the transition of growth of adults, children into adulthood as well. So anything that has 2 captains, 1 ship, you've got Libra. So the downside of Libra, if you have too much Libra in your horoscope, and it can fall in any house, it can fall in the 1st house. Mostly what we are referring to is Libra ascendant. When we are studying these signs, what does Libra sun or Libra ascendant look like? But if you have a lot of planets in Libra, you will have this tendency in that area of life, if it's, whether it's a 4th house, that will be your home and family life, you're very quick to drop the mandate of selfhood, which is Aries, because you very much want to keep the peace and compromise and, and rely on others there. And so, the question that Libra always struggles with is, what happens when we tell the truth? Will people like us? No, they won't. Secret guys to relationships. And I know, it's very new agey to say, well, I'm just telling my truth. Try that. Because remember, the other person has their truth too. Other people want to, and that's oftentimes overlooked. And we see a lot of relationship problems, a lot of business problems. People with good planets in Libra, they kind of know that, it's not that they're lying, but they, I don't know, even a good hostess, if you're not a good hostess, somebody walks in, you go, wow, that's an ugly dress, But if you're a really good hostess, which is very Libra, you might, maybe you might not say, oh, that's a fantastic dress, which would be fake. But you might say, oh, that dress looks really compliments you, right? And you've set off on a good foot because that person might just love that dress and it might be horrendous. So that is all, again, remember when we studied Venus, we saw all of these things. We see this, the Taurus aspect of Venus, the material aspect of Venus, like the bull, and then we see this compromise, negotiation, integration aspect of Venus reflected in Libra. So the Libra hero is, in the hero's journey, in Campbell's hero's journey, it's called atonement with the parents. Oh no, atonement with the father. I changed it to atonement with the parents. Because really we learn how to relate with two people, in an equal manner from our parents. How did they give and take? That's where we learn these things these things are all, in our consciousness. That's also what's showing up in your horoscope. It will show up in your horoscope if everybody around you was just fighting with, like this picture here, you will have some afflictions to Libra in the 7th house in your horoscope. And we learn from our parents how to understand opposites, because Libra is coming together of two opposites. So, it's because it's Aries and Libra coming together. And how did, people in your community, in your circles, reconcile differences? So that's why it's called the Libra hero. And also, it's also called apotheosis, and it's also called deification, which is really interesting. I don't have time today, but we'll go deeper into that, and I find it fascinating. Deification is you become a deity. So yeah, when you can do this, when you can make peace with your enemy, right? The hero is really, although his journey isn't over, he is now a true hero. And that's essentially what Libra is all about. When you can make peace with your opposite and understand where they're coming from. So I had a little story I wanted to share with you. So Libra hero, this is one of the classic Hindu myths called the myth of Sati Savitri. And it's so classic that, I went to school in India and until I was in 4th grade. And then after that, I've studied in international schools because my father was a UN diplomat. So we traveled around, but I was very lucky. My first 4th up to 5th grade was in India. So I had a very, I had all the Indian grounding in my consciousness. And then of course I moved to the West. And I think that perhaps is why I am good at integrating so much, Also, I'm a bit homeless in a sense, countryless, but I'm also very good at integrating. So this myth is interesting. I was thinking of which story to share with you because I need at least one story per session so you can get the Indian myths as part of your consciousness. And I remembered that this myth, now you're going to be shocked when I tell you the story, I studied it in my 2nd grade textbook. And I have a distinct memory of reading it as a 2nd grader. So what is the story? Now in India, this myth, in the very patriarchal culture that is India today, is sort of seen, the Sati Savitri means the perfect woman, the perfect wife, okay? But that's really not what this myth is. This myth is really, if you study it deeply, it's really a Libran myth. So what happens is this woman, this beautiful woman, Savitri, she is so brilliant. She's the daughter of a king. They always are. And she's just amazing. And she's so powerful that her father decides that he can't arrange her marriage. Remember in India, all the marriages were arranged and they still are. And she's so independent and she's just superb. She's so learned and she's just intelligent. And so he says, you get to pick your own husband. So she goes, okay. She's a princess. She picks this poor guy. His father is blind. He lives in the forest. And the father says, so she goes, well, I picked him. And the father goes, well, his horoscope has been done. And forget the fact that he's poor and he's, he lives in a hut in a forest somewhere with a blind father. He's going to die in 1 year. That's what his horoscope says. You imagine I'm studying this story in my 2nd grade textbook. Okay? So do you see how culture matters? Culture matters. When you read a horoscope, you've got to know what culture, what myths and stories they're bringing in, because that's what's being translated in your consciousness into reality. I'm reading this story in second grade, and I have a distinct memory of even a picture. In my book, it was drawn like a black and white drawing, where, So anyway, she says it doesn't matter. I am committed. I have made a decision. Now that I have committed to him, now that I find out he's going to die in a year, that's not really a good reason to back out of this marriage. So you're already seeing the myth of relationship that is grounded in the consciousness of, the people in the East, right? Which is, you stick to it, right? So that, and she's exalted for that she was so pure. But really what actually happens is, so a year passes, she has a very beautiful life with this man, and then he dies. There he is, he's dead. He's actually supposed to be dead. In my textbook, I remember the picture. There's a woman sitting there, and there's a dead body kind of lying on top of her. Second grade, guys. And Lord Yama, the Lord of Death, he's got a big mustache. He's kind of scary looking. He's sort of towering over them and going, he's come to get her. Now, she's a very clever Libran woman, okay? She immediately puts herself in Lord Yama's consciousness. She realizes, because when Lord Yama is only, I think, twice in Indian mythology has ever changed. When the time of death comes, you cannot argue with the god of death. That's a myth. That's a story in the Indian mythology. The time it's written in your horoscope, like this guy's, right? You don't argue with him. So she doesn't argue with him, but she wants her husband back. And so she goes, okay, I'm going to use my Libran skills. She must have been highly Libran. And you don't often see that, as I said, in the patriarchal Indian culture. You mostly just see it as her devotion and dedication. But here you learn how Libra functions. So she says, it's really dumb to ask the god of death, who never compromises on the timing of death, to ask him, like if she was a Cancer rising, she might say, oh my God, I'm so sad. Oh, please, 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 I plead with you. No, she doesn't do any of that. She says, I'm going to use, so she goes, so she starts to engage with him starts to impress him with her knowledge of the scriptures. And he's just so impressed with this woman. She's so brilliant. And he's like, you're so smart. I'm going to give you a boon, which is a big thing in the Indian mythology. A boon is like it's like the genie, anything you want will happen. She's very clever. He gives her a boon. She doesn't say, can I have my husband back? She says, oh, my husband's father is blind. Can you give him his eyesight back? He goes, sure, we can do that. Anyway, so this goes on, and there's a whole, you can Wikipedia it if you want to read the story. It's a very famous story. It's as famous as Cinderella in the Indian culture. Eventually, she keeps following him, and he goes, stop following me, lady. But she's very polite. She never once says, please, you're how horrible you are. You're taking away my husband. Eventually, she gets him to give her a boon that she can have 100 children. And then Lord Yama realizes that in order for her to have 100 children, she needs her husband back, and she gets her husband back. So this is a very Libra story in a way, that she immediately puts herself in her enemy's shoes and wonders what she can do. And it's a little tricky. I'm not saying, it's a little manipulative, which is, Venus and Mercury are both sort of manipulative planets, not necessarily negative as manipulative. They don't have that innocence of some of the other planets, or the purity, Sun, no matter what, I'm not going to do it. So that's a Libra hero of the Indian mythology. And, the Libra hero here is, Luke Skywalker, when he finally meets his enemy. It's his father, which is himself. It's our capacity to adjust and bring harmony and balance within ourselves, which is the true search of the hero. The enemy is not you met the enemy, and it's you. That's what you learn in Libra eventually. So the body part that Libra rules is reproductive system. We're moving further down. Remember, in Virgo, we saw the stomach area. Now we're going to and it's again ruled by Venus, called Shukra. If you remember that, Shukra is in Ayurveda, it's the Shukra Dhatu, which is so actually, for those of you who are taking this class who are in Ayurveda, if you see a weak Venus in the horoscope, the Shukra Dhatu is suffering. The Shukra Dhatu is the reproductive system. everything biologically in our body is geared towards one thing, which is reproduction, because, survival of the species. So when Venus in the horoscope is suffering medically, it means all the other systems are not working very well. So it's very important to be born for health purposes, to be born with a good Venus. So that's something that you can pick up right away. In Ayurveda, we do it through pulse diagnosis, but astrologers can pick up your genetic predisposition of your reproductive system, through Libra, condition of Libra in the horoscope. So the sun is debilitated in Libra. So again, another way to understand the signs, because which means the sun doesn't do very well in Libra unless it's supported by another planet, because sun is a leader and he's not a traitor. He's not going to compromise. So when sun gets into Libra, our leadership skills get a little bit weakened unless there's something else supporting. So always be careful if you have sun in Libra. Or what you see is people become extremely dependent on their partner and just lose their sense of self, which is their divine self. But Saturn, this is interesting, even in Western astrology, the sign of relationship, guess which planet you need to have good relationships? Saturn. Isn't that interesting? In Western and Eastern astrology, Saturn is exalted there, because Saturn understands that if I'm going to go on this journey, maybe I'm climbing Mount Everest, and along the way, I need somebody with me who has my back. I'm going to have to compromise. When he or she says rest, I don't feel like resting, maybe I'll take rest. Okay, rather than say, well, I don't feel like resting, I can keep going. Well, because you need that partner. And Saturn understands that limits create realistic partnership. And Saturn is the trader in a way. He understands that for survival, give and take. We don't survive if, you look, I think when from what I understand, when the Native Americans first met the new people that came with Columbus and all that, they didn't know the value of things. They were giving away gold and things for little trinkets, But Saturn is very clever. He knows what you need to survive. And he says, in order for me to survive, I need a partner. So Saturn, actually, you see people with Saturn in Libra, they will, rarely, even if they're difficult, they're very good at partnerships, business partnerships as well. They'll stick it out because they can see the advantage to themselves for it. But Sun in Libra is doesn't do as well. Okay, so the vessel that I'm giving Libra is a convertible with the just married signs. And I put, I just want you to know that, in Libra we are, it's the opposites coming together. And, even when there are same-sex couples, there's always a masculine and a feminine energy that's kind of, interweaving together, okay? Which is the opposites coming together to know ourselves. We'll know more in the 7th house as we keep moving along. Boy, it takes, okay. So the 7th house is called, now see, we just studied Libra, right? Libra can be your first house, it can be your second house, it can be your third house. So all of these traits, you're going to bring those traits into that area of your life. So, if Libra is your 6th house, let's say Taurus, okay, into your work, into, what you are of service to, you will bring this ability to compromise and all of that, because that's that's Libra. But if you're Libra ascendant, then of course all of that will apply. So what we look to now is the 7th house, which is the area of life. Now, if you're Aries rising, Libra is your 7th house, so it's kind of easy. But if you're not Aries rising, right, you can have any sign will be your 7th house. That's why it's important to know all the signs and all the houses. So 7th house is called Yuti, mixing, union, connection, also the descendant. So the ascendant, the rising sign, and the setting sign, okay, your 7th house is where the sun is rising at the time of, in the eastern horizon, where your 1st house is red, and where the sun is setting, that's where we'll read your 7th house, and that's where we'll read the condition of your capacity for a relationship, or your karma for a relationship. I don't want to be unfair and say capacity, or long-term relationship. So from the human perspective, the 7th house Libra is just our capacity to compromise and negotiate. But in the real world, when you're looking at the houses, in the 7th house, we read all your long-term relationship, your contractual or legally binding adult relationships, your negotiation skills, your diplomacy skills. All of that stuff is read in your 7th house, your business partners. And next to the ascendant, the success of the chart rides on the 7th house, and we'll see why it's a very important house. Remember, it's one of the 4 angular houses, 1, 4, 7, 10s, which are the 4 pillars, which kind of keep you stabilized. Because on the hero's journey, having a partner it's difficult, as we will learn. It's not easy, especially when we get to the 8th house. But it's a stability. So you're not out there looking, it's a stability that these 1, 4, 7, 10 offer. So it's a descendant, and it's the sun. So the sun is rising in the east, where your 1st house is, and where the sun is setting is the 7th house, which is, the self. Sun is our atma, our ego, our self-importance. I'm a divine self. I can be anything I want to. But yeah, you want to be in a relationship with a business partner or any one-on-one relationship, even your grown children. You have to let go of the self, okay? And put yourself, just like Sati Savitri did. She did not. She did not argue with Lord Yama and say, oh, this is my true love. No, she said, I'm going to get into his shoes, because his job is death. I mean, that's his job, right? You can't argue with him. His job isn't to be, the hugging saint. His job is, when, your time has come, he comes to get you. He takes the body, he takes the spirit away. So in the 7th house, in your 7th house, what we read is who you are not. Oh, first, it's also called one of the Maraka houses. There are 2 Maraka houses, 2nd and 7th. Maraka means death inflicting. Now, I'm not teaching you how to read death, but astrology does have a section of astrology, where in Vedic astrology, where you can study, called the sunset year. You can study the study of death. But, mostly it's metaphoric death. But if you are very ill and you're near, sometimes the 7th house planets can cause death. So but don't do any calculations there. But it is called a Maraka house, so you need to know that. But, think of it metaphorically. When you get into a relationship, now I have to be who I am not. And what happens is, in the 7th house, we're always looking for our opposite. If you have a lot of masculine energy, you're looking for a feminine energy. It doesn't matter if you're male or female. If you're more masculinely energized, you will naturally be attracted to a femininely energized. And, because again, 2 captains, 1 ship, you need 2 skill sets to make this journey. So oftentimes what we see in your 7th house, now we're not talking Libra right now, although we will look at Libra as well. In your 7th house, we will see all the things that we've discarded to say, I have discarded, for example, I'm an astrologer, right? So I've discarded being a businesswoman, right? So yeah, I'm married to my husband's, I'm a corporate wife, right? I'm the astrologer, and, he goes out and does the business, right? He's an engineer who does the business side of life. So part of me part of him that he has discarded, which is studying the deepest, weird stuff that I do, which we will look in the 8th house in a minute, the unknown mysteries of life, like astrology. He doesn't have time for that. So it's a discarded part of ourselves that we look unconsciously, whether you have arranged marriage, whether you have love. In India, we call non-arranged marriage love marriage. Isn't that interesting? I remember that as a child. First time I was like 7 years old, and I heard about something scandalous called love marriage, because some neighbor girl had run off with a boy. And I always imagined it kind of like she's standing on a balcony and throws a suitcase and they run away together. But because in India, most marriages, even today, 90% are arranged. Okay. What we'll do next, if you all are interested, I'm going to teach you the compatibility, which I think is the most questions I get asked on. How do we find compatibility, Vedic compatibility and relationship compatibility? We will work on that, and we'll learn more on that. But anyways, so the 7th house shows all that you're not. And then we go out and search for that person. We're looking for somebody who I am not. It's very exciting at first because they complete you, but then they get on your nerves because they're so different from, then they become your enemies and you become theirs. So that's the difficulty, okay? So the better your seventh house, the more mutual respect you have for somebody who is not like you, okay? And the more you have, the more well-disposed your seventh house, your ability to step outside your comfort zone, will all be seen in the seventh house. So the seventh house is where the integration begins. 1 to 6, we're just developing ourselves. Now the hero is like, okay, if I'm going to make the rest of this journey, I better begin this integration. And of course, it's also the sexual union, because you can't do that alone. Anything there's so many things you can do alone, but certain things you can only do with a partner. So that's really what the seventh house is. Now, if you have a very strong ascendant, mark my word, it's going to make it more difficult to have this integration, And if you have too many planets in 159, for example, too idealistic, right? It's better to stay single. You will not compromise your higher ideals. There's nothing wrong with that, but you may have to be in a relationship. And, but if you have a strong descendant or seventh house, oftentimes strong is a lot of planets there, and, we interpret that, then you kind of lose some of your individuality. But, above all, this is the hero portion of the hero's journey where we're learning to move fluidly between two opposite things. And you can read my last blog I sent on that, between science and spirituality. Okay? Just so you know that Amma is Libra ascendant. For those of you who read that blog, you will understand what I'm saying. She's Libra ascendant with Saturn in the first house. An exalted Saturn in the first house. So she's very fluid, very capable of compromise and understanding two opposite sides. So here we go back to the horoscope. So if your Aries rising, the furthest from you, look at the furthest from you. The one that's behind you is 12, that's your house of loss. The one that's next to you sustains you. You're going to go on this hero as you're born, you're going to eat. But the furthest from you is your seventh house, okay? And that's important because we are reaching with our partnerships as far away from ourselves as possible. That's why they're difficult, okay? And it's also an angular house. Remember, we learned 1, 4, 7, 10. Very important. If you have planets in those, good planets in those signs, you can weather anything because this first house, whatever your first, let's say this is your first house. If you have planets in 1, 4, 7, 10, they will stabilize you, the self, the home life the relationship, and the career. Those are the basic 4 pillars of worldly existence. So it's a very important house. And as I said, next to the first house, it's the most important because, I was just thinking about that Warren Buffett, when he was asked, what is the secret to his success? And he said, look, the secret to my success, the secret to financial success, of course, that's what people are asking. How did he become? I believe he's worth 68 billion. I was reading somewhere, and he's a good guy. He's leaving $2 billion for each of his kids, but the rest he said he's going to give away. He doesn't believe you should give away too much to your kids. So pretty, but he said the secret to my success is marry the right person. But again, your business partners or your partners create, doesn't have to be married, in this day and age, but your partners creates that stability. So actually we do read the seventh house, if you have good planets there, as a good capacity to do business. He does, Warren Buffett, to be able to make alliances, stick to them, be fair, and make deals so that you can succeed. It's hard to succeed alone. So diplomats and people, even people who go into law and business and who deal with international conflicts and resolutions have strong seventh house. So do you imagine our current president has an strong seventh house? Nope. If you're interested in that, you can read I have some articles on my website on that as well. Don't want to get into politics here, but boy, some days it is hard not to. Okay, so that's the seventh house. Oops, okay, we're moving on to the 8th. Any questions so far? Anybody want to ask something? Can we move right along? Are you guys tired? Do you need a break? Yes, no? Is everybody good? Here, let me unmute you for a second. and ask you if you need, we're 1 hour in. Anybody need a quick break?
2:45.
Okay, if everybody's good, unless somebody sends me a chat or says they need a break, I'm going to move on to the 8th house. It's really exciting. The 8th house is very exciting. Okay. All good. All right. I know it goes fast, eh? 1 hour. Okay. Good. Let's keep moving. Let's see. Mute all. Mute all.
Everyone.
Okay. 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 So all muted and back again. Let's move. Okay. Let's move to the 8th house. So what happens? We make this great commitment to get a partner. And again, as I said, it doesn't have to be a relationship or any kind of partner. It can be just two equal people. I just read a beautiful article on these, 7 women who bought a mansion together, and they're just tired of looking for partners, and they just bought this really nice mansion. That's a more 11th house thing, but they pooled their money together and bought a big house, and so let's partner with each other. So there's many ways we partner in today's world, but it requires a heck of a lot of compromise. It is much easier to go at it alone. So what happens once we realize I can't do this alone, and we make the compromise, we get a partner. Okay, this is when it gets scary in the hero's journey. What's next? Scorpio. Entering unfamiliar and dangerous territory. So unless you have a lot of capacity to surrender, the house that follows Libra, that supports Libra, is Scorpio. Okay, and Scorpio is, even in the dominant culture, we know Scorpio is kind of this mysterious house. So what is Scorpio? Scorpio is, his symbol is a scorpion. You can, he has the capacity to sting, but the symbol is also a scorpion and an eagle, because the capacity to see wider picture. But scorpion is, it's really where, once you made that deal to partner with somebody, the metamorphosis, the alchemy begins of your actual transformation. Now the hero is ready to really begin his transformation. Because, when we're on our own, and we see that, we really don't. You live on your own, or you work a lot on your own, you don't, like I work on my own, but when I used to work in an office, completely different. You really, really, every day you get to see your failures and your flaws. When you're on your own, you don't see them. And that's only when you can actually, your transformation begins, okay? So Scorpio represents things I don't know, things that we just don't know anything about. And, it's all the taboo areas of life. Alchemy, again, because it's a sign of metamorphosis and transformation. It's the second liberation house. First one was Cancer, Moksha house. Second is Scorpio. And a lot of the family secrets you will see in the chart, that are anything that's hidden and things you don't know anything about, things that are mysterious, and even research, all of that stuff. But we also see, I do a lot of work with constellation therapy, and we always look to Scorpio in the 8th house to see if there are hidden family things that nobody talked about that are, still causing you PTSD. Do you remember in our first lesson we learned about those mice whose parents were, were shocked with, after spraying some cherry blossom oil on them, and then the mice had this trauma, the baby mice? That would be an 8th house thing. You don't know why you're afraid, but you're afraid because there's a hidden secret that 3 generations ago there were, somebody was tortured or, hurt or something, and it's carried on into the next generations. So Scorpio is that beautiful, and if you don't have a good Scorpio or in the 8th house, you can't study astrology. So don't freak out when you learn about Scorpio. In fact, almost teachers won't even take you on if you can't deal with Scorpio. Because even study of astrology can leave you very vulnerable. And if you actually take a first appointment with me, one of the first things that I give in my appointment form is, it says, if you have a lot of fear of the future, please don't make an appointment. If you have a lot of fear, or if you want yes, no answers, don't make this appointment. because there's not going to be yes, no answers. It's secret. It's deep and esoteric stuff that we are studying here. There's not going to be, oh yeah, this is going to happen. Now I know what I want to do. A lot of people think if I just go to the astrology, I'll find out. Now I'll know exactly what to do. Now we're going really deep into the human psyche and our life as human beings and our evolution here. So you need a very good Scorpio or 8th house in order to study the study of astrology. And again, Scorpio, if you have a lot of fear of what the future holds, you will see troubled Scorpio or troubled 8th house, because you can't deal with uncertainties. Scorpio is an uncertain sign. Remember, it's coming after the 7th. Once you made that relationship in the 7th house, you met your enemy and made peace with your enemy or decided to embrace your enemy. Now you have to day-to-day live with it. It's one thing to make that peace. Now try being, married for 35 years, right? And, your partner is going to do things. I'm using that as a metaphor, but it can be in many, many other areas of your life. So anything that makes you go, oh my God, that can't be true. That's Scorpio in the 8th house, okay? Anything that makes you feel vulnerable. It can be a good thing too. It can be a good thing too. Somebody suddenly gives you, comes over and hands you over a fortune. You go, that can't possibly happen. That's 8th house. So anything that's unexpected, and human beings don't like Scorpio because unless you're Scorpio rising, for people who are Scorpio rising, they have this, and if you have a good Scorpio rising, there's several people in this class, they can go with the ups and downs of life. They have this tenacity. Because remember, Scorpio is ruled by Mars. So they have, it's the second Mars sign, like Aries. Aries Mars is a little bit youthful fire. But this is the second Mars sign with Mars is really strong here. And so they can deal with things. Scorpios, we say you can't kill a Scorpio. They are survivors of the zodiac. So Scorpio ascendants generally go through life, but everybody has intense experiences, but unless you've been in Scorpio's shoes, because you only know what an intense experience is based on your own experience. Even with books, you won't know, But Scorpios generally, they're destined to have Scorpio ascendants, very intense life. Life will be up and down and lots of intense experiences and unexpected, good and bad, depending on the chart. There's a lot of turbulence in Scorpio, a lot of chaos that occurs because it's, I didn't spell research correctly. Should have been picked up. Okay. Because Scorpio is a water sign ruled by Mars. Okay. Interesting, right? There's a water sign ruled by a fiery planet. So Scorpio's ascendants are both sensitive and martial. You put that together. What do you get with that? On the positive side, you get this resilience because, most of our struggles in life are emotional struggles. This makes me feel good or feel bad. Eventually it's what we feeling, our feelings, but a good Scorpio, and that's, if you're counseling a Scorpio, what you have to teach them is to detach from the constant internal emotional prompts. And a good Scorpio has that capacity to do that. They can, because they have the courage to defeat the internal emotional prompts that are always like, this and this and this, they're taking you down the dark road or, crazy stuff, right? Because Mars's job always is to get stronger and stronger and stronger. So Mars here represents the capacity to endure, for the hero to endure some real tough stuff and still come out strong. Okay. And Scorpio is that, in Cancer, we have water, but it's sort of more on the surface. People with Cancer ascendant, people with a lot of planets in Cancer, they kind of know what they're feeling there because they're feeling it all the time. You'll see it on their face. They'll walk in the door and you will see that oh my God, they had a bad day. They've got that face on, But Scorpio emotions, water, are deep, deep below the ocean. They don't even know they're feeling it. So it's because a lot of times there's a lot of secrets and things ancestrally that are hiding there. They just can feel the turbulence. So Scorpio, oftentimes they don't even know they just feel this angst, but without knowing why they're feeling it, because they can't access those emotions. So that's part of the work. In fact, people with a lot of planets in Scorpio or Scorpio rising, almost always you see them, they become therapists, psychologists, Jungian study, because they're wanting to dig deep, deep, deep to find out what lies underneath all this outer persona. And Scorpios naturally tend to be deeply private. When they don't tell when you meet with a Scorpio ascendant or planets a lot of Scorpio, they don't tell you a lot about themselves. Gemini walks in, they tell you everything that happened. They're very verbal, and Scorpio will kind of sit there patiently and they'll say, yeah, you tell me, okay. So remember, here, ruled by Mars, the hero is learning to become really, really strong in the face of uncertainty, okay? Turbulence, vulnerabilities. I mean, you can't become a hero because everything is smooth. You become a hero once you have ridden the road of chaos, and you see that in the stories too. Once the hero meets the heroine in Libra, right? Now now we're like watching, and we're like, oh my God, is he going to make it? Is he going to, then the story, it's the climax of the story with the hero. Everybody's shooting at the hero, and we're not sure the hero is going to make it, but he's got to get through this, to go to the other side. Scorpio hubris. If Scorpio is not well disposed, it can be pretty traumatic, and you have to be kind of careful, especially because there's a lot of emotional turmoil. There's all these addictive issues, self-destructive issues, coercive behavior, inflexibility, again, because of Mars, and just deeply hidden PTSD is seen here. You will see it in Scorpio if there's a lot of PTSD from this life or past lives, or early childhood trauma will be seen in Scorpio in the 8th house. If you see that, especially, that for whatever reason, the child suffered, and then it's gone really deep in the subconscious, and that's what we know, that addictions, in addictions almost always there is childhood trauma, right? Because there is pain, there is grief, there is PTSD, but we can't access it. In Cancer we can still access it. In Scorpio we can't. It's gone so deep, we just know it doesn't feel very good. So Scorpio can cause a lot of negative things too, if there are a lot of planets there that are not doing well. And again, a healthy Scorpio is the strongest and the most, these guys are very, very strong. The current new president of India, if you follow Indian politics, is Scorpio ascendant with Moon and Mars, and he is strong. He can basically take on everybody and anybody. Very well disposed Scorpio. He has no fear. He doesn't fear anyone, and so again, it depends on how the sign is functioning in your horoscope. Okay, so don't start interpreting at this point. I'm just showing you. I always show you the two sides, and usually it's in between for us. So in Scorpio resides all these things that are not supposed to happen. Anything that pulls the rug. It's not real life. Okay, it's anything that's the Kundalini energy. If you have a lot of planets in Scorpio, or your Scorpio ascendant, if you start a lot of meditation practice, your Kundalini energy is more likely to set off much faster. I have an article I'll send you guys on my personal experience with Scorpio. I have Jupiter in Scorpio, which is actually very good for anybody who wants to study astrology. And now I understand why I had no intentions of studying astrology, but as my Jupiter Dasha started, I was asked by my guru to study astrology. I did not know. I think in my wildest dreams, 25 years ago, I think if I had thought the last thing on earth I would be an astrologer, because I had never run the Dasha, which we will learn, the planetary period of Scorpio. But it was there, it was hidden in my horoscope. And as soon as that Dasha started, I started to study astrology on the behest of my guru, who said, go study astrology. So in the hero's journey, this is the portion, where the hero almost dies. But it's also called the ultimate boon. It is through that difficult task that the hero now has some transcendental power. So Scorpions, people with planets in Scorpio and Scorpio ascendants they do have this ability to have psychic powers, astrology powers, Reiki powers, anything that's not supernatural powers. when we study later, we're going to study dashas. I think next class, once we finish the houses and the signs, I'm going to use probably Einstein's chart. You will see how much Scorpio in 8th house he had in his chart. And that's why he was able to access, the quantum mechanics, quantum physics. But at the same time, he's also the father of the atomic bomb, okay? So you see he had a lot of Scorpio in 8th house in his horoscope. Okay, so here the hero, almost dies, but, this is Frodo standing on Mount Doom, right? Those of you who follow my brain is going now here. In Lord of the Rings, that's what I was going to say. He, finally discovers that the ring is dangerous, and he takes this really dangerous journey, and he drops it. And now so basically Scorpio is where we start to mature. Because remember then we're on the last leg of the journey, 9, 10, 11, 12. We would have gone 1 to 4, 4 to 8. Then we're on the ascent, okay? So, but with Scorpio comes a boon or a transcendental power or something that comes out of, once you've gone through a traumatic event, you have a superpower. Until then, you're sparring with white belts. Until you go through a Scorpio experience or a Scorpio dasha, you're sparring with white belts and you walk around saying life is easy. Once you go through that, now you are, double black belt because you're now sparring with other black belts, okay? So it's also called in the hero's journey the refusal to the return. Many, many people, even in stories, here it's Neo, after he goes through this really difficult, traumatic stuff, he gets powers to fly, across the matrix. But we always worry that people don't want to return. They, now that they have this superpower, whether it's Reiki or astrology or, whatever it is that astrology also falls under this, because while astrology is the study of, mathematics and numbers and all the stuff I'm teaching you, eventually you need a superpower to read the chart. Okay. You need highly intuitive, highly esoteric skills, and capacity for deep research in order to keep studying. Remember, I showed you just the 16 charts alone to be able to see that, and then you have to intuit what is going to happen based on that. So, but what we want is, after I finished my 8th house dasha, it's very interesting. I was meditating in my 8th house dasha. I have Jupiter in Scorpio. Since I'm Aries rising, I have Jupiter in Scorpio. And I was literally flying out of my body, in my meditations. But once that dasha finished, my guru said to me very clearly, you need to get off the meditation cushion and go and teach. And my initial reaction was refusal to the return. Well, this is really cool. Why do I have to go do that? But because as we will learn when we study houses 9, 10, 11, 12, that the journey isn't over. Once you've got the supernatural power, you still have a way to go. 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay. So the body part for Scorpio is the external sexual organs, which is our most vulnerable portion of our body. It's the only part that is not connected to anything skeletal, right? So, and it's also very exposed. We don't, they can get hurt easily. And that's the nature. So you're seeing now the metaphor for Scorpio. In Western astrology, they use Scorpio more for sex as well. I think in Indian astrology, sex is seen more in the 7th house, the sexual union. But the orgasm, the mini death that occurs, is seen in Scorpio, okay? Because that momentary death and the metamorphosis that occurs. So Scorpio in many ways goes through a life of ups and downs, and they're not always bad, so please bear with me. Some of my very wealthy clients and trust fund babies all have strong 8th house and Scorpios because, they're it's things that are not supposed to happen. You don't have to work. But there is this Scorpio's life is very up and down, and Scorpio dashas are, because there are these many deaths that are constantly occurring. It's also called the house of death. In Mrityu Bhava in Indian astrology, but usually it's the metaphoric death, the one that makes us go, oh, what? No way, that didn't happen. So the moon is debilitated in Scorpio. It's funny, I didn't know what picture to put, and I put Halloween. Halloween is a Scorpio event. And those of you who love Halloween, you probably have a lot of Scorpio in your chart, okay? Because it's not about security. The opposite sign to Scorpio, if you look at your chart, you will see is Taurus. It's Taurus that's seeking security. The opposite of Taurus is Halloween is risk-taking. It's magic. There's a lot of magic in Scorpio, secret doors. And, all children's stories have secret doors. You know how fascinated we are as children when you find that little trap door. I wonder what's behind it. There's no security there, but you go anyways. Okay, so the moon is exalted in the opposite sign of Taurus, but it's debilitated in Scorpio because Scorpio can't give the security our inner child, the moon, needs. He just can't. That's not his job description. He can give you access to magical powers, ultimate boon if you have a good, well-disposed Scorpio, but it's not secure. It's a sign of more vulnerability. Remember the sexual organ where we are most vulnerable. And moon in Scorpio can give great deep insight, but not security. All right. And so that's why he's debilitated in Taurus and exalted in Taurus and debilitated in Scorpio. K2 does really well in Scorpio because, K2 is not looking for security. So to Scorpio, I'm giving them for their Tanu, a submarine, for their vessel. Remember, we're doing a vessel symbol for each. We've done a body part symbol. We've done an animal symbol. So if you don't remember anything else, at least you will remember that. You can make a little list, and when you're reading charts, you can draw the metaphor from that. Okay, metaphors are also very Scorpionic. This ability to see metaphor, to be able to see the abstract side of life will come from Scorpio. Oh boy, wrong spelling. Okay, so I gave a submarine because it's private, deep, secretive, powerful, and waterborne like Scorpio. So the 8th house. All right, well, the 8th house is called Ripu Bhava. Ripu literally means a tear in the fabric of reality. Similar to Scorpio now, because there's this, we have the illusion. Remember, we learned about Maya, the illusion that this is all real. So imagine what happens when we go through Scorpio or 8th house planetary periods or planets there. The PTSD that comes from that creates a little rip in the fabric of reality. So I always think of it sort of like, what if this is a hologram, right? And when you are, when you're engaged in, fun times and everything is la, 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 when you're engaged in events that make you go, oh, I can't believe this happened. There's a momentary shutdown and you get a tear in the fabric. You get a glimpse into the other reality. Maybe what we are looking at here isn't the reality, the real reality, okay? So 8th house, just like Scorpio here, this is where psychological transformation occurs. So you see people with strong 8th houses, and again, depends where it's placed, but there will be an interest in psychological transformation or psychology if you have planets in Scorpio or in the 8th house. And the job of the 8th house is to teach us, just like the job of Taurus is to teach us that security is the most important thing, the job of the 8th house is to teach us that life is unpredictable. Life is a mystery. You will never, even if you study, like me, astrology for 25 years, you still will not understand why things happen the way they do. So remember, when we study the 7th house, for Taurus people who are Taurus ascendants who seek security, right? They do well. Their opposite is Scorpio. And for Scorpio people, so when we do compatibility matching, we actually look for opposites. Because remember, it's to complete the whole. So we will match Scorpio, which is sort of very, interested in mysteries and psychology, with somebody who has a little grounded in reality and says, yeah, well, what about how we're going to pay the bills? And vice versa. Okay? So the 8th house, when we look at the 8th house in the horoscope, we always check Scorpio too. You always check the corresponding sign, to see, and the lords and the rulers of those houses. But when you're looking at somebody's 8th house, whatever that 8th house may be, whether it's in Gemini or if it's in, Cancer, what we're interested in looking at, can this person handle ups and downs of life? Because guarantee one thing in life, there are going to be, everybody has a Scorpio and everybody has an 8th house. Okay, so life is full of ups and downs, and leaves us vulnerable and raw and broken at many times. And the only difference is the degree. For somebody who's grown up in war-torn, Venezuela, their endurance is different from, you and me. When, a noisy neighbor moves in next door, we could be having an 8th house experience, literally. I've seen it so many times. I once had a client who, strong 8th house, which is the, she emailed me on a very urgent message one day. She was a very super vegan, nutritionist and all of this stuff. And she was crying about her child. And I was like, oh my God, somebody has died. Something terrible has happened. And she showed up and I gave her an emergency appointment. And what had happened is that, it's a true story, that somebody had given her, at a birthday party, had given her son, her little 2-year-old, half an Oreo cookie. That was the end for her. That was the up and down. I'm not judging it. I'm telling you that the relativity of it is also something we study in astrology. But there will be ups and downs. For her, she was planning to raise her kids so pure, right? And so basically, she did not have a very good 8th house. She did not have the flexibility to say that nutrition is important. But I think it's, but life is a mystery why you stay healthy. Believe me, people smoke and drink and live forever, and people, are so strict and and they get really sick. So in the end, it's our capacity to let go. Remember, it's a second moksha sign. All 3 of the moksha houses, Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces, 4, 8, and 12, require us to let go of control of this life. They're water. They're like water. You cannot control this. So we look at your 8th house to see how well do you handle the major ups and downs of life. Do you get a downturn and do you just fall apart and crumble? And and people with strong Scorpio, and we tell them they're like bugs. You can't kill them. They will pop right back up. Because again, it's Mars ruled. It's the ability to endure. You need Scorpio to be a soldier even. How well do you handle events? And people you have no power to control. And that connects now back to the 7th house, because 7th house, you got married, you got into a relationship. Now you're dealing with it day after day after day. What are you going to do when your partner changes dasha and decides, they want to go off and spend all the family money and buy a yacht and sail around the world? You don't have any control over it. What are you going to do? Are you going to join them? I had a client like that once, and her husband got into motorcycle racing, literally 10 years into their marriage. And I said, well, get a helmet, because he isn't coming back from that. He doesn't have that flexibility. You do. So area of life, remember, Scorpio is that paranormal things that make us go, anything that's not supposed to happen. But what is on life on earth as a bhava, because here we are studying the bhava, the houses, things that are on this earth. What are these 7th house indications? Yep, sharing financial resources. You want to feel, I can't believe this is happening. Share financial resources with somebody who has a very different spending habit. Your partner's support for you. Sex and sexual preferences. Oh my God, raising children. This is where, alimony and even, child custody battles are all 8th house events. Because, deciding now that you had this beautiful love affair, got married, now you had children. You didn't think about what religion they're going to be brought up in. Are they going to be brought up as astrologers or scientists, like in my family? Because my husband's a scientist, I'm an astrologer. What values are you going to give them? Now, if you have flexibility, you can give them both. I remember one year going to Amma and complaining to my husband to Amma and saying that my husband didn't believe in her. I was really upset, and I was like, Amma, what the heck, He doesn't believe, just thinks you're a very smart lady and a very, exalted. He thinks she's a great woman, but he said, why do you think she's divine? And she got very mad at me, and she said, people don't have to believe the same thing. She said, this is not, everybody has a right to, and that's really what she's talking about, the unspoken contract that you have 2 partners, 2 equal partners. They don't have, they need to support each other in their beliefs, but they don't, the idea that they have to share the beliefs, right? And become each other is what ends up causing us the crisis of, the eighth house. So the karma that sustains seventh house, if you have a good, so actually the two houses of relationship are seventh and eighth, Scorpio and Libra always, because in the seventh you can have that beautiful wedding, but in the eighth you're going to have to make it work. And and it's fine when your kids are 3, but what happens when they're 15 and they're making choices, and that's when it starts to get difficult. And all the emotional rejections we feel, and we have buried in us that, let's say you were a child and somebody with a red sweater was constantly mean to you. You don't even remember it, but every time you walk into a room and you see people with red sweaters, you just feel emotionally rejected. So we have these patterns that are, eighth house buried deep within, and we don't realize they show up in relationships all the time. And that's why when we study yoga of relationship together, you will learn how do you reconcile that. First, you understand, your Venus, your eighth house, your seventh house, and then you can begin to actually work with, maybe you have some emotional rejection issues that you're not aware of, buried deep in your Scorpionic eighth house stuff, okay? And of course, the eighth house is this constant feeling of violation of my personal space. Remember, like Scorpio, eighth house, we all like privacy. We all like to get into other people's business, but when somebody violates our space, we get upset. But being with a partner, the eighth house, to sustain the seventh house, you have to allow some violation of your space. If you need space, then it's better to go at it alone. If you're climbing Mount Everest and you don't want, to share a tent on the night when it's really, really cold and, because you need your own space, maybe you should go alone. There's nothing wrong with that. And a lot of people don't realize they don't want to spare space, but they want to be in a relationship, and then they come to me for relationship counseling. So the eighth house indications, they're not very good. There can be a lot of negative aspects to the eighth house because it is a difficult house. Remember, it's the house of transformation. It's the house of metamorphosis. The alchemy is occurring. Water is going to now turn into stone, or stone into water through this process. So anything that makes, is difficult lies in the eighth house. In our horoscope, serious illness comes through the eighth house, which transforms you. Betrayal, definitely, secrets, major accidents, death, humiliations, scandals. These are all eighth house events. And, this is a quote from Fight Club. Only after disaster can you be resurrected. It's only after you've lost everything that you're free to do anything. And we all know that. If you look at any wise person, anyone, any good teacher, anyone that you can look up to, if you look in their background, they went through some major eighth house events. And through that, they saw the tear in the fabric. They saw that reality is precarious, and there's much more to this reality. So they're adults, actually. There's much more to this reality than we think. Now, there are also some really, it's not all bad. I mean, you can have some really good things because your past life debts that need to be paid or garnished, we believe, are also read in the eighth house. So, credit that you're due. So sudden windfall, sudden wealth that comes, so oftentimes you go to an astrologer and they'll see an eighth house thing and they'll say, but is there an inheritance that's coming to you? Or, even a lottery can sometimes come from the eighth house. And even unexpected fame or something that happens unexpectedly. Because remember, the eighth house, like Scorpio, is things that are unexpected. Your life overnight changes. That's the eighth house. You go into the eighth house dasha and you will see that everything suddenly changes night to day or day to night. Doesn't have to always be bad. So inheritance or struggle. If you have a difficult house, eighth house, you might see the struggle over the inheritance. Maybe your siblings took everything and you didn't get anything. Astrologers are very, very good at reading that in the horoscope. And you see people, scientific researchers and people who do, and astrologers, people who want to go deep and understand, if you're going to study astrology, you're going to have to use your eighth house. And unexpected discoveries that come, because you've seen that tear in the fabric. You've seen some, psychically, you kind of drawn that in, not just from your learning, but intuitively. That's all coming from the 8th house. And of course, the job of the 8th house is to tell you that things are not what they seem. That's why astrology is an 8th house event. You walking around your life, when you come first time you come face to face with astrology, especially Vedic astrology with the dashas, you're like, what? That's not possible. What are you telling me, that the story of my life is already written and you can access it, right? And certainly maybe the details are hard to see, but I can teach you how to see the basics. They don't make mistakes. That's a mystery. We don't know how they got it. They were great scientists, the Vedic seers who put that together. So again, unspoken side of life is the 8th house. So if you have a lot of 8th house interest in astrology and tarot and shamanism, and all of you will have strong 8th house planets because you're taking this class. You know, religious trance is seen in 8th house. Out-of-body experiences, people when they have near-death experiences, you know, and even like people with, you know, who are spies or, you know, work for CIA, they will have strong 8th house tendencies. And in a lot of Indian mythology, curses, you know, or like voodoo, they do that in Africa. It's a very popular thing. It's all 8th house event. We don't know how that works. Nobody knows how really astrology works. We have no idea. The dasha system is so profound. The algorithms that we use to do the predictions, you've seen them if you work with me. We have no idea. I mean, there's theories, but we have no idea how they came up with those numbers. Some people think that aliens came in and gave us those numbers. Some people think it's a hologram. We're just calculating the computer program. Okay, and you'll never know. You're never going to know. That's the beauty of the 8th house, that you say, I'm never going to know. Okay, so let's start on the next section. So what we've covered so far is 1 through 8. Okay, and if you remember in the zodiac sign, this is now the last 9, 10, 11, 12 are more we're now going to the transpersonal phase. You know, we've kind of, so in the hero's journey, Campbell called this departure, which we call houses 1 through 4, so Aries to Cancer. We saw that. And then we saw the initiation from 4 to 8. And, you know, the hero almost died in Scorpio. You know, in Leo, he was like, wow, I can do anything. I'm just, you know, I'm ready to go. And then in Scorpio, he found himself. Now we are going into the ascent, okay? The 9 to 12. So, in a sense, you could say the most difficult part of the journey is over once we pass Scorpio in the 8th house, okay? So this is kind of interesting. And when we study yoga of relationships, which is my favorite class to teach, but I can't teach it unless you know at least your planets, so I'm going to teach that next. You know, the most important job that astrologers do in India, it's not what we do here, which is, you know, psychological counseling. It's set marriage dates. They're called muhurta. Even the non-believers, the skeptics, the progressives, they still go to the astrologer to pick a date to get married, date and time. Now I do that for my clients here, but I cannot follow the very strict rules we have annually. There's about 35 days of the year that you can get married. Can you believe it? That are considered auspicious. Within that, there's times. So oftentimes, if you go to an Indian marriage, the fire ceremony that takes place will be in the middle of the night at 2:30 a.m. I remember as a child sitting in my mother's lap, you know, at my, you know, important weddings. So weddings are big. Indians are big on weddings, as you know. And, you know, 2:30 a.m. is when the actual ceremony is taking place, because the astrologer has chosen the most auspicious time to make the 7th and 8th house journey possible. Okay. And so remember, this is return, Sagittarius to Pisces. So there's many criterias, you know, the moon should be waxing, it should not be waning, and Venus should be doing well. And there's so many criterias that they use. That's why in the end, annually, the astrologers put out about 35 days of the year that meet the highest standards for picking a marriage date and time. But the Hindu wedding season is December through March, which is so, and you can actually do really inexpensive weddings if you want to, because the venues are empty. in the other months. And if you look here, oops, no, we go back. See that? This is the ascent. So what's really happening is the sun is in its descent. The sun starts off in Aries and it's descending, and it's going around. And then now it starts to ascend in Sagittarius through Pisces. So my interpretation here is that what they saw, so basically what they want is the sun, which is our divine light, our connection to our Atma, our soul nature, needs to be on its ascent when you get married, to make it the most auspicious time to get married. Because remember, the horoscope is all the horoscope is doing is looking at the moment of time of your birth and what is its destiny. So what Indians use astrology for is muhurta, which is this moment of time. Let's pick a moment of time to get married or start a business or whatever it is, important juncture of your life, so it maximizes the best destiny. So really, it's not your personal journey, it's the time's journey. So one of the criterions they use is the sun should be on its ascent. So my translation from that is, it takes a hero to be married. It takes a hero to be in a long-term relationship. Because now the hero has gone through 1 through 8, and he's acquired some wisdom, and the hero, the sun, right? And so, the sun in its ascent is considered auspicious. Because sun is now on, it's coming, instead of coming down, it's rising, in the horizon. Okay, so anyways, that's the picture here. And what he's actually doing here, there is a red powder, which is part of the ceremony that he puts in her parting. And there's a whole bunch of ceremonies that are Vedic ceremonies that take place during the wedding ceremony, including a fire ceremony that's done. And that's what he's doing. I just wanted you to know that. Couldn't find a better picture. He's not hurting her. He's just putting the red powder in her. I'll send you an article on that if you're interested to see why we do all of that. Okay. So anyways, if any of you want to get married or you can always consult me. What I do with my Western clients, of course, is we never get married on Saturdays because it's Saturn's day. So if you don't, we prefer Friday, Venus. Thursday is good, Jupiter's day. Sunday is also good. But Saturday is usually not considered. It's too much survival-based, Saturn-based. And actually the days of the week are also named after the planets, both in Western and Eastern astrology. So if any of you are ever interested in, if you need to pick an auspicious time for something important to you, you can ask me. What I do for my Western clients is, since they can't be this specific and they can't get married at 2:30 a.m., or middle of the night, I just choose the best possible, given the parameters that they've offered me. Okay? Okay. So let's move along. We got to Scorpio, entering unfamiliar and dangerous territory. So now our hero is he's got magical powers now, because he's got, once you recover from PTSD, you have access to things that other people don't. When you recover from a difficult, traumatic event, whatever it is, whether it's an illness, you live in a neighborhood and other people do not know what you know. That's the boon. That's the magical power you have. It doesn't necessarily have to be some, literal magical power, but you have access to something which the others don't. If nothing else, you have access to letting things go, not sweating the small stuff. When you've been through the big stuff, you don't sweat the small stuff. But when you haven't been through the big stuff, you sweat that your kid ate half Oreo and you wanted him to be pure vegan and never eat a preservative in his life. That's sweating the small stuff. So, but either way, once you've gone through this Scorpio or 8th house journey, Sagittarius says, there's got to be something bigger than me, than my journey. Because remember, Aries and Leo are all about, my hero's journey. If I'm going to get through this difficult journey, I've got to believe in something. Maybe I believe in astrology. Maybe I believe in Amma. Maybe I believe in Jesus. Maybe I believe in guns. Maybe I believe in, it doesn't really matter. We're not saying good or bad belief. So Sagittarius has this need to have something to believe in, something that gives meaning to his life. So this journey is bearable. That's what the next stage is. So this journey is meaningful, not bearable. I'm being harsh. Journey is hard. If you live long enough, you know it's not an easy journey. If you're still a kid, maybe you think it is, but it's not. It's not supposed to be. It's a hero's journey. It's supposed to toughen us up. It's supposed to create alchemy and transform us. Transformational journeys are always difficult. So here in Sagittarius, which is the apex of the fire element, now we're going to study the apex of the fire element, the apex of the earth element, air and water. It's the last development of the fire element. Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius, and Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn, etc. So Aries symbol is actually a centaur. It's a half man, half horse kind of thing with a bow. But oftentimes it's called Dhanu. Dhanu means a bow and an arrow, because Sagittarius is all about aiming to the highest goal. Not, Virgo, let's say, for example, is, the karma there is it's not necessarily lower, but it's simply, just get the wheat cut. Let's make sure there's enough food for the winter. That's not aiming low, but that's not the stuff that Sagittarius is interested in. Sagittarius is interested in, the highest of things that human beings can reach for. Yeah, and sometimes Sagittarius can go hungry, right? Because they're so busy reaching for the highest, and you see, because remember, it's ruled by Jupiter. So you see a lot of that in the New Age culture, where, if I aim high and I, do my spiritual practice, yeah, but that doesn't mean your fridge will, just automatically fill with food. You still have to go out. And so we're not calling aim high as in anything is lower or higher. We're simply saying this is the stage of the hero's journey, where the hero is saying, I'm going to aim high and miss rather than aim low and hit. Okay? Sagittarius, we say, they're very comfortable when they have a goal, when they have a very high goal, they do really well. If you put them in a lower goal, they don't do very well. They don't, they get agitated because they need to aim high. Look for really the big pictures, meanings of things, and the purpose of our existence, these big picture things. So yeah, you need a strong ninth house to study astrology as well. So the evolution of the fire signs, the evolution began in the fire sign of Aries, because really these are the three dharma or life, my purpose. We always talk about my purpose. That's in Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius, and then houses 1, 5, and 9. But fire element is the purpose, dharma element. So in Aries, we search for our unique self. I'm special. I'm the captain of my ship. I can do anything I want to. I'm just going to keep moving, and I'm going to get there. The journey here is off. In Leo, the hero relaxes. He says, you know what? I am divine. I am, there's a lot of power in Leo. I'm the sun. I'm as good as God itself. The Leos have God complex, we call it, on the negative side. And it's always co-creating, whether it's through children or through their creativity and commanding. But Sagittarius fire is very different. It's now the mature fire of the hero, where the hero is looking for its selfhood, but through something higher than myself. In Leo and Aries, hero is still pretty self-obsessed to some extent, because it's me and mine, and I'm pretty awesome. And, unless the sun is very well placed, the hero here is pretty convinced that he's pretty awesome. I have a client who he's Aries rising. We just wrote a book called, what is it called? Power of Strutting Around or something, like what it's like to be really cool. And I was laughing. I couldn't believe it. I forget the title, but had something to do with I'm really cool. But Sagittarius fire is very different. It's very interested in its selfhood, but in the social context. What is the meaning and purpose? And so, bringing together a higher calling to humanity, all of that stuff is Sagittarius. And so Sagittarius will become restless when it's purposeful exploration, its desire to go out and explore and find new horizons, learn new things, travel, all that, and stops. Because remember, it's Jupiter ruled. So remember, it's ruled by Jupiter, so it has the personality of Jupiter. If you go back and visit Jupiter videos, you will see there's so much of Sagittarius in it. It's the first sign of Sagittarius. The last sign, Pisces, is the second sign of Jupiter. So Sagittarius is where human beings, so, all of these different parts of the Vishnu, are wired. Remember, we all have Sagittarius in our horoscope. We may not be Sagittarius ascendant. If you're a Sagittarius ascendant, then all these things will play out in a very strong way. But we have it somewhere. It might be our 6th house. It might be our 7th house. If it's our 7th house, we are looking for a broader view of life. We're looking for a higher purpose through our relationship. Do you follow? If you're a Gemini rising and Sagittarius is your 7th house, you're going to be looking for, mentorship, higher purpose, through your partner, 7th house. And, Gemini people are actually pretty blessed because their 7th house is Sagittarius. So their relationship house, I hate to say it, but Sagittarius ascendant is considered the best ascendant to be born in. If you're going to call one the best, because it's ruled by Jupiter, and it's also matches the 9th house, as we will see. Because, it's, again, Jupiter rules, so there's a lot of Jupiter influence, even if Jupiter is not sitting there. The planet of luck and generosity and divine law and higher thinking is the ruler, is the landlord. So even if the landlord is not home, he might have gone somewhere else, he's still sitting there offering protection, just like Taurus rules Venus. Most people with Taurus and Libra, generally you will see they will be beautiful looking. You will see a lot of prettiness in people who are Taurus, and because even if Venus is not sitting there, Libra and Taurus ascendants are very well proportioned because Venus is their ruling. Their proportions are symmetrical, what we consider beauty in our culture. Okay? So just like that, so technically speaking, astrologers consider Sagittarius one of the best signs to be born under, either as a sun sign or as a moon sign or as an ascendant sign, because it's in search of broader view of life, higher purpose to our existence. So human beings are wired to be protective and, and hoard our food and not share, and because we have to survive. We don't just give away our money. That's part of our survival instincts. But human beings are also wired to think about higher things, to think about what else is out there. So after we finish our growth, our metamorphosis in the 8th house, now we are turning to, what is the broader meaning of this life that we are here for? And religion has always existed. And again, culture will matter. And today there was an article in LA Times last week, I think, that said that millennials consider crystals and astrology their religion. And that's what it is. And so again, you have to look at culture when you're trying to read. You can read your religion in your horoscope, but you're going to have to look at which social community they're coming from. If they are millennials, they may be very 9th house inclined and be interested in, astrology and crystals. So, but we are wired for religion. We are wired to look for God. We are wired for that. And we are wired for, higher ethics. Because remember, in Libra, we learned about the justice, which is the ethics of, eye for an eye. That's Libra in a sense. That's justice. You kill somebody, you go to jail. But here, it's a very different. It's morality and altruism, and but Jesus said, it's not an eye for an eye. That's Sagittarius, and you will see, that's Jupiter rule. You will see if you raise Sagittarius children, they will have this just natural ethical quality to them. They will know. My son is at Sagittarius rising, and even as a child, I never had to put him in timeout. If he did something naughty, he would just put himself out, right? Because he just understood I did something wrong. And that's sort of the Sagittarius orientation in life. But every sign has its downside, so we will look at that too. Oh, so Sagittarius is an interesting sign. Now I have not studied this astronomically, but you guys can research it. It's hard to find a lot of stuff on it, but I remember studying the light from the galactic center about 20 years ago, so I put this slide in there. What Vedic astrologers believe, and Western astrologers, that Sagittarius contains, and portion of Sagittarius is reflected into, I believe, or tears into the galactic center. And the galactic center is our second sun. We have light from the sun, but we also have light from the galactic center. Now, what I understand, astronomers say there's a lot of black holes and dust in there, right, astronomically, but there is such a thing as a galactic center. But what the Vedic script, books say is that the light of the galactic center nourishes and sustains life on Earth. And now in Indian astrology, it's the first Earth, it's the last edge of Scorpio and the beginning of Sagittarius, first 13 degrees, I believe, of Sagittarius, which is the galactic center. The light of the galactic center comes through the zodiac, through that to us. I think in Western astrology, which is, you all know this, right? I sent you an article on it. There's a 25-degree difference. They consider the 27 degrees and on of Sagittarius as the galactic center. We consider that late Scorpio, early Sagittarius as the galactic center. It's also, if some of you are familiar, it also corresponds to the Mula Nakshatra, the star constellations. We will study nakshatras at some time, but the Mula Nakshatra is a very important nakshatra in Vedic astrology. So anyways, the point being that there is light coming in from the galactic centers through Sagittarius. So now you can see why Sagittarius is such a magical sign that nourishes life on Earth. And it gives us higher intelligence. It gives that higher, not book intelligence, but that divine intelligence that Jupiter contains. And it comes through, that's why it's happening in Jupiter's signs. And gives us the ability to align with divine will. So in the Vedic system, there are, just like we have dashas, right? We have Saturn dasha, Jupiter dasha, Mercury dasha. The Earth also has what are called yugas. Okay, the Earth doesn't have dashas, it has yugas. And there are 4 yugas. Satya Yuga is the truth yuga. Satya, if you know the word Satya, it's the purity yuga. That is when the light from the galactic center is at its peak. Okay? We're not in Satya Yuga. Some of you who've studied Hinduism and all, Vedic thought, we are in Kali Yuga. So we are kind of some people think of the tail end, started in the dark ages, we're in the tail end of the dark dashas of the Earth. We are in Kali Yuga, which is, we are not so connected with the divine spirit. In fact, some people believe that the battle of Mahabharata, which is Bhagavad Gita, if you studied that was the period when we were descending in from they go Satya Yuga and Dwapara Yuga, Treta Yuga, and Kali Yuga. We were descending into this dark age. So the rishis and the sages left behind astrology, because people born in this beautiful yuga, golden age, they don't need just like, I don't believe Amma needs a horoscope. They could access their karma. They could read what they were here to do. They said, you're not going to remember, so they gave us astrology. That's one of the stories that we hear. They left this behind so we could, because our minds are not so divinely connected that we could download, here's what my karma is, here's what I came here to do. We're not going to know that, so we're going to thrash around. So they said, well, let's give us astrology. That was left behind for us by the great seers, so we would have access, as much access as possible. So anyways, we are in Kali Yuga. Just know that there's debate. Some people think it's going to end in 25,000 years, and some people 5, and some people 500 years, and 250,000, and that's up for debate. It's an 8th house proposition. At some point, if you're interested, I'll teach a class on that. But the Earth also has dashas, and we are not, right now in the magnetic field that is blocking the light from the galactic center. It's not so bright. It's blocked. Maybe that's the dust and the black holes that astronomers are seeing, what we call galactic, that area is galactic center. So that also, so you have to know, just like we have dashas, the Earth also has these periods. And most people believe they're 25,000 years each. Some say it's longer, but anyways, it's that's up for study. If you all want to study that, you can go study the Yuga, the cycles of the Earth. But we do know we're in Kali Yuga right now. So we are sort of the tail end of the decline, and then, then we will go back up. Okay. Okay, so said back to Sagittarius. So you're getting a picture of Sagittarius. This is where the galactic center is, which is where the light is coming in, so we can be divinely inspired. So yes, in Sagittarius, we read things like philosophy, theology, religion, interest in prophecy and prophets and, preachers, very much links to Jupiter. And belief and faith is also seen here. Now, when Sagittarius goes wrong, we get a lot of problems because you can get uncertain and extreme faith. It doesn't matter what religion you are. I was raised in a Hindu family, but as an atheist, because technically, I was not raised with faith. I do not, well, I'm going to giving away my chart altogether. I do not have Jupiter in the ninth. If you have Jupiter in the ninth, you can see it. Or Jupiter in Sagittarius, you will be, if you have that, you're most likely raised in a family with a lot of faith. I was raised because my father at the age of 12 walked out of the local temple and said, you guys are not explaining things properly. Because, religion, organized religion, as you all, has its, we all know that, has its, extremes. Whether you're a Hindu or Muslim or, so I know with this picture, I'm not singling any religion out. Anytime you have, organized religion, people get carried away. So when you have afflictions to Sagittarius, you can have uncertain and extreme faith. And when that happens, you get this, shoving your ideas down other people's throats, whatever religion you are. Even if your religion is crystals or if it's astrology, wanting everybody else to believe what you believe. Because when your faith is uncertain, that's when you're most likely to want to convert others, because it helps you feel good about it. When your faith is certain, and when you see a good Sagittarius, they're not interested. They're very pluralistic. They embrace everything because they see the divine. So impressionability, you see, again, Jupiter can be very impressionable. Gullibility, even people who strap bombs to their chest and blow themselves up in the name of whatever have Sagittarius impulses. So remember, every sign has its down and up. Don't say this good, that bad. It just depends on what it's doing. Okay? And dogma, Sagittarius, because its beliefs are so strong, the need to believe is so strong, Sagittarius and the ninth house can go into dogma and false beliefs if it's not well disposed and cause a lot of trouble in the world and for ourselves. The body part ruled by Sagittarius is the buttocks, and which is the largest muscle in the body for long-term motion. And really that's the job of Sagittarius, is to move as far away as possible, learn as much as possible, get a PhD and get a double PhD and study things and know more and more and more, but not in a Gemini way, which is just to know for the sake of knowing. That's Gemini. Gemini wants to study because it just wants to understand things. This is the opposite, ninth house, which is to know so we can understand our cosmic purpose. So when people come in with Sagittarius planets or Sagittarius dashas or Sagittarius ascendant as a consult, if you're a counselor, you need to teach them the best practices of learning, of achieving long-term goals, sticking it out. Study astrology for 20 years. And for God's sake, you will begin to understand life. Don't just study a little bit and then, make a YouTube video, right? And for that, you need the buttocks. So you can see the hip area is very important. It's where the muscles are. And so it's our capacity to take long distance journeys. You all must have good Sagittarius. What you're doing by taking this class is taking a long distance journey. You're going to a foreign country. In the old days, if you wanted to study, you had to go to another country. Like even today, you go to India. But today you can go on the internet and I'm teaching you about Indian philosophy and Indian astrology. So that's the body part. So in the hero's journey, this is the portion of the journey. It's the best part of the story. After the hero almost dies, they're shooting lasers at him and you're watching and you're holding your breath. Is he going to make it? And just as he's barely going to make it in Scorpio, he gets swooped up by his mentors. And, like in the Matrix, it's the Nebuchadnezzar, the ship comes to get Neo. It's always at the last minute. The mentor never comes in the middle of the fight. He lets him endure, lets him, survive and, use that to become strong. And just before that death is occurring, the hero is not going to make it. The mentor or here in this case, the eagle is coming to swoop him away. And then he has a high view. So it's called the magic flight. Yep. So planets in the ninth house and in Sagittarius are referred to in the hero's journey as magic flight. And they produce some really nice things in our life. But we need to be careful not to get carried away, because those dashas also come to an end. So we enjoy Jupiter dasha, we enjoy ninth house dashas, and we enjoy Sagittarius dashas for the most part, unless it's really poorly displayed. Even if it's not well disposed, you have so much belief. When you have so much belief, you can take, when you believe, you can take on any hardships. You can still enjoy it if you believe in something. So it's a dharma house. So for the Tanu, for their body, their vessel, we're going to give Sagittarius a private jet, to travel and experience new things and spread their wings and see the world from this bigger perspective. Okay. So now today we're going to end in the ninth house. Houses 1, 5, 9 are called the trines. And these houses, just like Sagittarius, Aries, and Leo, they are dharma houses. If you are, if you're Aries rising, then that will match you. But if you're not, so if you're Taurus rising, your 1, 5, 9 will all be your earth houses, will be the earth signs, right? 1, 5, 9, 1 will be Taurus, 5 will be Virgo, 10 will be Capricorn. And they produce our core beliefs and our destiny, because that is how we are wired. This is our karma, or this is how we are wired. So the first house is our self-image. Much like Aries, you see the similarity? It's the head. It's the ego. It's the core beliefs about me and my abilities. Very similar to Aries. You see that here? And the fifth house is remember we learned it's the beloved. It's the Ishta Devta. This is what inspires me. It's our belief in our creative self-expression. Very similar to Leo. But Leo may not be your fifth house. Leo might be your fourth house. I know it's a little difficult, but you'll get used to this as you start studying astrology. But your fifth house is your fifth house too. If you're air sign rising, your fifth house is going to be an air sign. If you're water sign rising, your creative self-expression is going to come through another water sign. So your Scorpio rising, your fifth house will be Pisces. It's your core beliefs into what inspires you. Well, if you're Scorpio rising, Pisces is what inspires you. It's your beloved. It's the fifth house. It's your Ishta. The ninth house is the belief in higher principles and philosophies that you espouse to. Core beliefs of our tradition, of your tribe. We will see your family. So in a sense, here is your Ishta. This is what inspires you. It's your personal favorite deity. This is your genetic, your tribal deity. It's what you learned as a child, because actually your father's life is seen from the ninth house. Okay, so let's move on and I will show you why. So the ninth house is, the Buddha said there are 84,000 paths to enlightenment. So you have to keep remembering when you work with Sagittarius, it is looking for the truth. But the truth is different for every sign. So, for Aries, yes, the truth will be found in Sagittarius. But if you are Pisces ascendant, you will find the truth in Scorpio, the higher truth, because that's your ninth house. So we have to remember that everyone's ninth house is different. So if you go to Amma and you get initiated into a mantra, she will ask you, this is actually what she's asking you. You can either say your fifth house or your ninth house, your favorite deity or your ninth house deity, your truth. What inspires you? What do you want to, what form of God do you want to pray to? And then you will get a mantra based on that. That's how pluralistic the Hindu system is. That's why we have so many gods, because it's saying there isn't one. There is, you can choose. You can choose anything. You can choose Buddha. You can choose Krishna. You can choose Jesus. You can choose love. You can choose light. You can choose wisdom. You can choose anything you want to. If that inspires you, so in a sense, the ninth house is what inspires you. And if you follow your inspiration, yes, you can get enlightened. If you're willing to sacrifice for it. But you know, you can also choose yourself. You can even choose the self. It's allowed but it's a very difficult path. Okay. And when I first chose mine, the first time I chose because I was brought up in a very atheistic path. I chose the God has no form. So I got a mantra. I was initiated into a mantra for formless, God without a form. And then years later, I changed my mantra to, I wanted, it's much easier when we have a deity and a form. I wanted to meditate to love and maternal love, unconditional love, which I believe is what Amma offers in the, in the initiation process. So anyways, so that is the ninth house. Ninth house is called Bhagya Bhava, or the house of good fortune. Like Sagittarius, it's sort of the place of our luck. So planets there function really well. They bring luck and good fortune into our life, past life credit, much like the fifth house. Remember, the 159 are they're the lucky houses. We say we always enjoy the dashas of 159 because I get to be me. And 1, 4, 7, 10 are the pillars. They're hard, but they hold our house together from collapsing. The self, the family, the relationship, the career. So these are all different. They're all different types of houses. But the most favorite house in the chart is the ninth house. It's called Bhagya Bhava, or it's the house of good fortune. And so dashas of the ninth house bring good fortune into our life. They bring great teachers, mentors. They bring Jupiterian energy into our life, and good mentors and teachers show up, and suddenly we're swooped up and we have a bigger view of the world. And once we have that, we stop complaining so much, and we start, we get out of a lot of our angst. And so again, like Sagittarius, this is where our belief systems that will answer life's bigger questions are found. And again, it depends. If it's Aries, you're going to find it through the Aries energies. If it's, Aquarius, you will find it through the Aquarius energy. The ninth house is called the house of good fortune because I believe that when you combine the desire of the ninth house to expand the mind, to travel as far as possible and learn about all the cultures and everything that's out there, not be limited, and then you combine that with the pursuit of a purpose-driven life, it's a, you have good fortune, right? The expansive mind and purpose can bring some really good things into your life. Now remember, if your ninth house is afflicted, you won't have the expansive mind. You will just have belief, but you will have dogma. You could believe in, that every citizen should arm themselves with guns, right? And that's your belief system. So again, we don't want to always look at belief systems can come in many, many different ways. But that is how you are, your belief system. But if you have a strong ninth house, you can't change your mind. And you all know that ninth house plays a big role, particularly today when we are on Facebook and social media. We'll read an article, that's our ninth house saying, and we'll read something negative about something, some political case or something that we don't want to believe in. And we'll say, no, I don't believe that. So they're playing on our ninth house because our beliefs are so strong in our consciousness that we will see facts and we'll say, no, I don't believe that. And you see that all the time, even in cults, right? That people, even when they're presented with the evidence, because they've been so trained to believe. So belief is a double-edged sword, just like everything else. It can expand your mind because it gives you faith, but it can also shut it down. Okay? And so again, here we are with limiting beliefs. So ninth house is the house of, wonderful things like belief, faith, fortune, good fortune, distant journeys, and looking at the bigger answers to life's questions. But then if you have an afflicted ninth house, and if you can see that confirmation bias comes in, and the stronger your belief, people will die for belief. We know that, right? It's happened in history many, many times. We can become slave to our beliefs. So that's why you need good Jupiter and a good ninth house. So if you have a lot of very strong beliefs, question your ninth house and see if it's functioning as well. Ask an astrologer. Maybe you have so much confirmation bias that you are stuck. So any house can get you stuck. And no political system, no religion, no philosophy is exempt. including astrology. Okay. Because then you'll get stuck in, well, like astrologers do. I do that all the time because, I talk to people and they go, this happened. I go, yeah, that's the fourth house. Because this is, in my mind, that's how the world works. But honestly, the world works really well, even if you don't study astrology. And there are a lot of people who can understand how the world works without ever having studied astrology, right? And so we don't want to become slave to our beliefs. And so again, as a counseling course, when you're seeing the ninth house, Jupiter or Sagittarius active, it doesn't really matter if you don't understand how their ninth house is going. You teach them pluralistic, open-mindedness, removing dogma. That's what you teach them. Best practices of the ninth house, right? So some of these slides are the best practices of the ninth house. Some of these are the bad, not so good practices of the ninth house. You don't yet know how to decipher that. Is it good or bad? But that's not that relevant. What's relevant is what you're able to counsel. So finally, I'm almost done. The house of father, it's also called the house of father. We read your father's life from it. Just like some people read it from the 10th house, I tend to read it from the 9th. Because really what we're looking at is the type of mentorship you receive. Mentorship, and generally, quote unquote, father. Can be the mother too. I'm using father metaphorically, but traditionally it was the father you received as a child. So because your lineage, your tribal culture, kind of the tribe you grew up in, where you formed your beliefs. I grew up in a very pluralistic home. Very much. The beliefs were left wide open for me. There was nothing that I was told I had to believe in. And you can see that in my personality. Even astrology is constantly confirming that there's so many ways to believe. But then you'll see people who grow up in very religious home, they study astrology, and then they practice it very differently. And I haven't yet introduced this, but I do study a lot of Hellinger and family constellation therapy. And I started to do that because I saw this quote, children seldom or never dare to live a happier or more fulfilling life than their parents. Unconsciously, they remain loyal to unspoken family traditions that work invisibly. And so family constellations are a way they use these methodologies to discover the underlying family bonds and forces, that we are carrying generation after generation. And the horoscope is nothing but a reflection of your family constellation. What you're carrying, it's the consciousness of your family at the time of your birth, and it's working through you. So we have to be, eventually, as we will learn, the hero moves on, we break free of that. And so your ninth house, the beliefs that you took in, your seventh house, the give and take experiences that you took in as a child. Did your father take more? Did your mother take more? Or whatever, or did they share? Those are the beliefs you took in. And so ninth house, the religion of your family is seen there. Okay, so that's enough for today. And boy, I was on a roll today. Thank you all for staying with me. I appreciate it. And we're finished with ninth house. And we will do 10, 11, 12, and then we'll move into reading charts together. Then you will have all the raw material, and we will read charts together after that. And thank you so much for staying with me.